Speed is an important factor to many when seeking a second citizenship. But if you can't afford or can't bring yourself to make a donation to a Caribbean country to get a second passport in months, you might be asking, can't I just go and live somewhere and become a citizen that way? Well, today I'm going to share with you 8 countries where you can get citizenship quickly by actually moving to another country. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, and here at Nomad Capitalist, we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where they're treated best. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. And today, we're going to share a handful of countries where almost anyone can get a second citizenship without a large financial investment, without making a donation to a Caribbean country or somewhere like Malta or Vanuatu, and without having to have the luck of having the proper family tree. There's only one caveat. In these countries, you actually do need to spend time in the country. And so if you're willing to accept the lifestyle change, if you're willing to possibly pay taxes in these countries, if you're willing to, in many cases, learn the language of another country, then these countries are a way where you can, for not a lot of money, go and get your second citizenship. These are good for someone who wants to build their passport portfolio, or if you're just starting out, you don't have a lot of money, you don't want to make a donation to a Caribbean country, $100,000, get a passport in 6 months, these are an alternative. And so there's 2 types of what we call naturalization. You're becoming naturalized as the citizen of a country. We talk privately with some of the folks we work with about what are called paper residences. We created that term. It's where you become a resident on paper, and after X number of years, 3 years, 5 years, what have you, you can go and qualify for citizenship. The Portugal Golden Visa, for example, is a form of paper residence. You spend 7 days a year in the country, but you have to invest a 6-figure sum. Panama is a low investment. After 5 years, you're allowed to apply for citizenship, yet in practice, very few people who use Panama as a paper residence actually get their passport. So you have to be very careful with paper residences and choose the right one. So, as far as naturalization by actually moving somewhere, there are a couple countries that let you do that in as little as 2 years. Now, we're talking about time to applying for citizenship. The actual application might take another year, in some cases even 2. But Argentina is one that is often talked about as a fast second passport. You can apply after 2 years. Now, certainly we've talked about Argentina's new wealth tax. They've had a lot of financial problems over the years. It is a beautiful country. It is a big country. It's a country where you might actually enjoy spending time. The challenge, again, with some of these passports is if you're spending enough time there to qualify for citizenship, are you going to have to pay taxes there? There's definitely some tax planning involved. And so if you're willing to go through all of that, Argentina, you can go and get residence. You need to basically show that you have some money coming in. As with a number of Latin American countries, you can get residence by showing bank statements. Maybe you have to put a little bit of money in the bank there, but there's not that much work involved to get the residence. Now, again, what I say is if something's too easy to get into, maybe there's a reason because it's not so easy to get out of. But for folks who are concerned with having a great quality second passport, great country with great landscapes to live in, a lot going on, Argentina fits the bill. Probably not a great option for a lot of high-level entrepreneurs and investors with great wealth. But if you're just starting out, not a bad option if you just want to get a passport. Another option in South America that is much less talked about, but has a similar 2 to 3 year timeline depending on your situation, is Bolivia. Now, from my understanding, we don't do a lot of work in Bolivia, but from our context in Bolivia, really the commitment in Bolivia is more than Argentina, more than most of the other countries, where they want 6 months a year, or maybe you can even, in the civil law system with judges, convince them to accept even less. In Bolivia, they're looking for really closer to 8 or 9 months a year in the country. And so if you can put in 2 or 3 solid years there, you get a very interesting passport. I don't think the one that's trying to chase you down for taxing your wealth. Not as good of a passport for sure, but it is an interesting second passport. They have visa-free access to Russia, for example. So a very eclectic country, not one that I think is on the radar of most nomad capitalists, and I think that there's probably a reason for that. There's just not a lot of opportunities there from what we've seen outside of some perhaps niche investment opportunities. But if you want to spend some time in Bolivia, you can certainly get that passport in a couple of years. If you're willing to make an investment and put in some time, you can buy a home in the country of Mauritius. So now we're in the Indian Ocean. Now we are far away from civilization. And I spent some time in Mauritius, beautiful place. The cool thing about Mauritius is they have lots of different tax incentives for people who move there. for businesses that move there. And so you can spend 6 months a year in Mauritius. You can do that for 2 years, and in theory, you are eligible to then apply for citizenship. The requirement is that you go through a special investment route where you now have to put $375,000 into a property. This would be ideally your main home. You could rent it out when you're not there. They lowered that investment amount from $500,000, so maybe you've seen that $500,000 number circling. It's now $375,000. There are a few criteria that the property needs to meet, but you can buy some nice villas, and with that you get permanent residence and you fast track your time to citizenship in Mauritius. Very interesting passport, access to Europe, access to Russia, access to China. It's in this rarefied league of passports that has access to both East and West. So very interesting one, tax-friendly one. If you have money and you want to buy a property, that might be the one that I'm looking at if I'm looking for a second passport in 2 years and I want to go and spend some time living on the beach. 3 more countries with 3-year timelines. Paraguay, great permanent residence program, interesting off-the-radar country, interesting emerging country to spend some time in if you want to be away from it all. The challenge is Paraguay is a paper residence, really not so practical anymore. It has become, as we've discussed for years, code word in recent years for fast, easy, cheap second passport. No country wants to be known for that. And so when there were some scandals in Paraguay, they tightened up the physical presence requirements. You're going to be looking at spending certainly the majority of your time every year. Some might call it the vast majority of your time every year in Paraguay for the 3 years. Language requirement. If you're willing to do that, some people, they like the adventure. It's an interesting place. It is perhaps the Cambodia of South America. And we've talked a lot about the opportunities in Cambodia. I think you could certainly go there if you're a younger entrepreneur. If you are a younger investor, you're looking for an up-and-coming place, you could go, put the time in on the ground, and you could become a citizen after 3 years. What Paraguay has is something that Ireland has, and which is a requirement that naturalized citizens do need to come back every once in a while, so do make sure you keep that in mind. Another country, Honduras, not that often talked about, 3 years, get a passport. There are numerous different ways you can get in. You can be a retiree, you can invest $50,000. So as with many Central and South American countries, numerous ways that you can get in by showing wealth or actually putting some in the bank, buying a property. 3 years to citizenship. You have to learn Spanish, have to spend some time there. Interesting country. Living there, I'd probably want to be living on Roatan, off in the Caribbean, not on the mainland. Certainly has a reputation for being quite dangerous. I've been through some of the capital cities in Central America. Probably not the place where most people want to be, and certainly in that area, Honduras, El Salvador, the capital cities, get a little dicey. A lot of the cities get dicey, and they have a reputation in Honduras. But great quality passport. I know some Hondurans, great people. And if you're willing to spend 3 years probably living on an island of the Caribbean that is tied to Honduras, you can get their citizenship. Uruguay, I've said for years, tough citizenship to get. If you're going there with your family rather than as a single person, 3 years to apply for citizenship. It is a civil law system. As if you're coming from a common law system where we follow the order, you're going to be in for a little bit of surprise in these civil law systems where judges make decisions. And so there have been incidences of people who they go to Uruguay, they live there, they join a country club, they live their lives, but they're not there all the time. And it's been, yeah, we're going to say no to you. And so it's a little bit different system than you may be used to. I've had people say, no, I know people who are becoming naturalized in Uruguay. And maybe if you go and spend your entire life there for 3 years with your family, they do have a tax holiday package there, so it could be a more tax-friendly option. But I'm not sure that Uruguay is quite the sure thing that some people want to think it is. Definitely worth taking a look at because they have attracted a lot of headlines recently for their new tax residence program for people who move there and buy property. Now, a couple of other conditional fast passports. Number one is in Brazil. Do you want to marry a Brazilian? Do you want to have a Brazilian child, either through adopting a Brazilian child, or by actually physically giving birth in Brazil? If you have a Brazilian spouse, if you have a Brazilian child, you can get permanent residence, and by actually spending time there after a year, apply for citizenship. That's the rule. You generally really want to spend time there. and some knowledge of Portuguese is required. Again, Brazil, not exactly a country lacking for bureaucracy. Opening things as simple as a bank account can take months in some cases if you're doing business. But it's a huge country. Great travel document. Pretty inconspicuous passport, I would say. Not a lot of people hate the Brazilians. So interesting one if you want to have a situation where you have someone in your family being from Brazil. Another example is Spain. If you are a natural-born native citizen of a Spanish-speaking Latin American country, or the Philippines, or I believe even Brazil, you can go to Spain, you can do your brief period of residence, and then you can apply for Spanish citizenship. Now that process may take a couple of years. It's probably the longest citizenship that if you're going to get it, once you apply, that application process is probably the longest on this list. I remember talking to somebody where it took her, I think, 3 years going through the application process, being from the Philippines, to actually getting that citizenship. So in terms of being fast, Spain is another one where I'm not quite convinced on, but technically you can apply pretty quickly. Now, the challenges here are, you're looking at countries like Argentina where they have a wealth tax. Now, you're looking at countries like Argentina where you cannot renounce that citizenship, and so they can do whatever they want. Bolivia banned Bitcoin. Spain would be relatively high on my list if countries are going to start more aggressively taxing their citizens who do not live in the country, as Spain is increasing its wealth taxes. Spain has a lot of problems. And so I think people might look at this list and say, hey, Argentina, that's not so bad, let's move there. What I'm always looking at is the holistic perspective. Again, if you're just starting out, and if you're young and you're taking my advice, maybe you delay university for a while, you go live somewhere else, you experience the world, maybe you get some business ideas. A place like Paraguay, a place like Argentina may not be a bad place to go, but understand that for someone who is already running a business, who already has investments, there may be tax consequences, there may be future consequences to being a resident of these countries or holding their citizenship. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying that sometimes making the donation to a Caribbean country and getting your lifestyle freedom to live wherever you want is a better way to get a second passport than these options. But again, you have to evaluate the financial, the lifestyle, the tax, and then all those consequences. Plus, read the tea leaves. Where are these countries going to be in the future? Why is it so easy? I'm probably not super concerned about a country like a Honduras, for example. But a country like Argentina, gives me some pause the more I look at what they're doing. So those are some fast countries to get citizenship without a large investment. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.